Hey, thanks for joining me again on the Morning Mindset. Kerry Green here. And I also wanted to thank you for sharing the Morning Mindset with people that you know who can benefit. I've been getting quite a few emails lately from people who are saying they discovered the Morning Mindset from a Bible study leader or someone in a prayer group that they're a part of at their church or in their community. And that is exactly the kind of places where you can share the Morning Mindset to help others who have a mind to grow in their faith, just like you do. And the impact the Morning Mindset is having on you can then begin to have an impact in their life as well. Would you consider that? Would you consider joining these others who are sharing the Morning Mindset with those they know and care about? I would appreciate it, and more so, I think they would appreciate it. And you can have an eternal impact in their lives. All right, we're in Romans chapter 8. We just finished Romans 8:28 that talks about God working all things together for our good. And now we are going to step into some of the deepest theological waters that exist in the Scriptures. The Apostle Paul in verse 29 begins moving into some of the reasons behind why God works all things together for our good. Did you know there's a why behind it? There's a reason behind it? Verse 29 begins with the word for. You could also substitute the word because. You see, it's tying Romans 8:28, which says all things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. It's tying that to this next set of statements that Paul's about to say. He says, for, because those whom he, God, foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, in order that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. And those whom he predestined, he also called. And those whom he called, he also justified. And those whom he justified, he also glorified. Man, there's a whole lot here. We'll probably take a few days to cover all of this, but let's just tiptoe into it for today. He says, those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. Now, there's two big words in there that there's a lot of contention about in theological circles. The word foreknew and the word predestined. What does Paul mean by those two things? Well, as I've studied this passage and other passages that use these words, I can't come away with anything else than to say that foreknew means that God knows beforehand who he is predestining. And predestining means selecting to be conformed to the image of his Son in this context, is what the verse says. It says he predestined them to be conformed to the image of his Son. Okay, so that's what this predestining is talking about. So let me wrap that up again. Those whom God knew ahead of time that he was going to select, he predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. Now, some people will say that means God looked down the corridor of time and he could see, now listen carefully here, he could see who was going to respond to him in faith. And so he chose those people. But you see, this verse does not say that. This verse doesn't say that anywhere. It says those whom he foreknew, and it doesn't tell us how he foreknew them. It just says he foreknew them. He predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. Now, knowing that God is sovereign, that God is God, and nothing is outside of his grasp, nothing's outside of his knowledge, nothing's outside of his purpose, I have to conclude that foreknowledge is based on nothing except his will. And if we go back to Romans 8:28, that this verse is tied to, we can see that. It says, for those who are called according to what? His purpose, his will. That's really the context here. So God called us according to his will, for his purposes, to be conformed to the image of his Son. We're going to continue with this passage tomorrow, but be encouraged today. You have been chosen by God to bear the image of his Son today.